All right, everyone. So the Republican primaries are a-goin'. We're in the heat of things now. And Nikki Haley is someone who's just kind of come out of nowhere as far as the mainstream political space. Now, she was already a governor before all of this, but if you weren't from South Carolina, you probably didn't know who she was, right? But now she is a hopeful to become president. She wants to try and get that nice chair in the Oval Office. And there's no way she will be, of course. The Republican primaries are a fight for second place, or at best, a fight for the vice presidency. And honestly, the way things are going, I'm starting to think that Nikki Haley could potentially end up being a fairly popular pick for Trump's VP. And I feel like that might be what she's gunning for at this point, because we all know that this primary is just a fight for second place, but that second place position could be a vice presidential position if they play their cards right. So I feel like it's worth talking about Nikki Haley more, because she could become a lot more politically relevant in, later this year. Former South Carolina governor and presidential hopeful Nikki Haley was responsible for bringing down the Confederate flag in her state, but failed to identify slavery as the cause of the Civil War. So I've talked about this a lot, but I grew up in the South, okay? I grew up in Florida, and many people say that's not even the real South, like the really picky people, but I assure you, if you've been to Florida and it hasn't just been Tampa, Miami, or Orlando, and you've actually left the city, You'd agree that Florida is the fucking South, okay? Like, dog, it is. So, I grew up in the South. And one of the most common tendencies of public schools in the South is that they can be a little bit iffy on what they teach, especially at the lower grade levels. I distinctly remember being in, I think it was third grade. I think it was third grade. And learning about the Civil War, a very, very, very whitewashed, kid-friendly explanation of the Civil War. And what they taught in that classroom, and I remember the feeling of, oh, that I had when I heard this, was that the Civil War wasn't actually about preserving slavery, more so as it was about preserving the right for individual states to have autonomy of their own away from the federal government's jurisdiction and like what the federal government wants, right? That is what they claimed. That is what my teacher claimed in said class. And I remember coming home from school, being in the car with my mom on the way home from school, more like it, and saying as such to her, and her getting quite upset, and proceeding to explain to me that what I'd learned was a lie, and no, the Civil War was absolutely about slavery. It was not about states' rights. Yeah, sure, the states' rights animation. It's a common talking point. And depending on what teacher you have, especially at those lower grade levels where standardized testing is less common, so like if you were in, say, middle school or high school, and you take a history class, right? And you do a whole module about the Civil War, and then you have to take a standardized test about that topic. If you are taught the wrong thing on the topic, then chances are you're going to score wrong answers on that, and, something's going to come up. Like, okay, so clearly this teacher is telling the student something wrong when all of them answer, like, the wrong answer here, right? Like, it's going to raise suspicion. However, lower grade levels, like third and fourth grade, there's not really massive standardized tests, so that kind of thing can just sort of be gotten away with if a teacher just feels like saying some bullshit that they personally believe, despite it not having any, any bearing on reality or the actual curriculum, And of course, that's also on top of stuff like the fact that I grew up in a place where one of the places that we field tripped in like younger grades was a place called Cracker Country. Twitch, calm down. I promise you, this is not TOS. I'm not joking. I'm not joking, guys. I have gone here on so many field trips. The dipped candles are so fun to make. You also get to churn butter. It's so cool. It's at the Tampa, Florida State Fairgrounds. But I have been here many times. Cracker country. Yeah. You telling me Florida's not the South right now? Look at this shit and tell me Florida's not the South. Tell me I'm not from the South. Look at those big-ass oaks with that Spanish moss hanging off them. That's the picture of Florida right there. Mossy-ass trees everywhere. Yep, that's Florida. So we would go on field trips to places like this that basically glorified, like, obviously 1891 is post-Civil War, but, like, a lot of, like, okay, I literally lived blocks away from a Civil War reenactment place where they have trouble finding people to play the North. Everyone that's local that goes to the Civil War reenactment wants to play the South. So they have to, like, enforce a rule, like, that, like, a certain amount of people have to play the North for the Civil War reenactments. You understand what I'm talking about here, okay? Like, to win the Southern vote, you have to do Confederate apologia in some way, shape, or form. You cannot say the Civil War was what it was without, like, losing a lot of the Southern vote. It's just, it is how it is. That's the juggle you have to do. I'm not surprised. I'm not even joking about that, by the way. It's a really big problem with the Civil War reenactments in the South, where they have a hard time finding people willing to play the North. And they only ever want to reenact the wars, like the battles, where the South won, you know? Only those really popular battles the South won. Like the really brutal, fucked up ones, where they would, like, mow down a massive field of unarmed, like, surrendering ex-slave soldiers that were fighting for the North. Like, they love reenacting those battles. I'm not even joking, by the way. Like, it's the South, okay? Like, to win those people's votes, you gotta do that apologia, you know? And so that's what we're seeing from Nikki Haley, it seems. Let's talk about how the woman responsible for bringing down the Confederate flag in her state became the woman who failed to identify slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Of course, we're talking about former South Carolina governor and presidential hopeful Nikki Haley. While Donald Trump is still dominating in GOP primary polling, Haley presents the most credible challenge to the former president. She had a tough couple of weeks after a voter asked her this at an event. Soundbite archived of recording. Oh, wait, there's a listen version. Hold on, we can just listen to this. Hell yeah.
Let's talk about how the woman responsible for bringing down the Confederate flag in her state became the woman who failed to identify slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Of course, we're talking about former South Carolina governor and presidential hopeful Nikki Haley. While Donald Trump is still dominating in GOP primary polling, Haley presents the most credible challenge to the former president. She had a tough couple of weeks after a voter asked her this at an event.
What was the cause of the United States Civil War?
What a goated question, by the way. Like, that question was asked for no other reason than just to see whether or not she'd say something incriminating. That comment was the equivalent of a YouTube comment, like, chat drama frog trying to stir up drama. And she bit the bait hook, line, and sinker and said shit that caused her controversy. She fell for it. That drama frog of a journalist got exactly what he wanted from her answer.
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do.
Thank you. And in the year 2023, it's astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery.
This was a surprise to anyone familiar with Haley's legacy as the governor.
That journalist's follow-up went hard as fuck.
The Confederate flag to be removed from the grounds of the state capitol. That happened after the 2015 shooting of black parishioners at a church in Charleston. NPR national political correspondent Sarah McCammon covered that moment and Nikki Haley herself for years, and she's here in the studio. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Ari.
We just heard about those two contrasting moments, Haley on the Confederate flag and Haley talking about states' rights as the reason for the Civil War. What do you make of that juxtaposition?
It is a striking contrast, Ari. I mean, I covered Haley's response to the mass shooting in 2015 at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston. That was when a white supremacist walked into a historically black church and murdered 9 people during a Bible study. Haley was there in the aftermath in Charleston addressing the people of South Carolina, and she...
What's really crazy to me is how we had this, when the 2020 election was coming up, we had this spree of far-right terror attacks inspired by, white nationalism and all that stuff. We had, just this spree of them that really exploded in late 2019 and early 2020. And so far, there hasn't been, a crazy amount of that, from what I can tell. I think there's been a lot of other stuff going on that's maybe distracted news coverage from it, to be fair. But, there hasn't been another Christchurch, right? And I worry that that's kind of I hate to word it this way, but I worry that we're kind of due for that with how radically violent conservative messaging has been getting and how politically heated this election is going to get. I think it's really wishful thinking to assume we're not going to have another Christchurch level terror attack tragedy occur. I think in the same way that one might say we're due for a hurricane because there hasn't been one in a while and the conditions are set for one. I feel like that's kind of the same position we're in when it comes to a spree of far-right terrorism in this year. I really do think there's going to be clip me on this, please, and do clip me on this and set a 1-year reminder so that you can hold me to it if I'm wrong, okay? I think that in this year, 2024, we're going to see a spree of crazy-ass far-right tragedies, terror tragedies. Sadly, not just that, Zan. We'll probably see at least a few dozen of those, even if we're lucky. Yeah. The FBI is going to have to be on its A game, or another Charlottesville. Well, that would count, right? A Charlottesville event would count as something like that, right? I feel like that's got to be on the horizon for this election. Trump has gotten more radical with his rhetoric. Everything about what he's saying has gotten more crazy and anti-democratic. His supporters have gotten more dedicated and more radical. I just don't see it going any other way than that,
He expressed the collective grief that everyone was feeling.
We woke up today, and the heart and soul of South Carolina was broken. And so we have some grieving too.
And Ari, as you alluded to, it wasn't long afterward that she led the effort to remove the Confederate flag from South Carolina's State House grounds. Now, she threaded the needle pretty carefully on that. She noted that for many people in South Carolina, the flag stood for their heritage and their history. But she said for many others, it was a, quote, deeply offensive symbol of a brutally oppressive past. And she said that it was in the aftermath of that shooting, it was time to take the flag down. Here she is signing the bill ordering the flag's removal.
Today, I'm very proud to say that it is a great day in South Carolina.
So yeah, her remarks last month in which she seemed almost kind of murky about the causes of the Civil War, they did feel a little bit like whiplash.
Well, what might have motivated?
I don't really care about the NPR commentary because you're here to hear my commentary, not theirs. This is a very common conservative talking point and a very common Southerner talking point. The idea, the lost cause myth, the idea that the Civil War was about sort of maintaining freedom for the states having autonomy even under the federal government. It's a massive myth. Obviously, that is an aspect of it. Whether or not states have the ability to individually decide slavery is legal is technically a argument about whether or not individual states should be allowed to do a thing if the federal government says no. But the reason they had that problem with the federal government in the first place, and the thing that goaded them into fighting, and the thing they were fighting for specifically, was the preservation of slavery, because the not even the federal government, by the way, at the South didn't even secede over the North saying to the South, you have to stop doing slavery. The North didn't even go that far. All the North did is say, hey, we want there to be an equal number of slave slavery and non-slavery states north and south of this line. That one straight line that goes through the country on all the state borders. You know the one. That one really long straight line? Yeah. That is what pissed the South off so bad, made them feel like their slavery practices were being attacked so much, they seceded and declared war on the North, okay? Here, I feel like the best response is just the Dubas Goobus video. Hold on. Dubas Goobus Civil War.
Very few things.
I love Dubas Goobus. I hope I get the Dubas Goobus follow one day. He's actually one of my favorite, like, content creators there is, period.
Very few things in history are black and white. A lot of it is gray. And that includes the Civil War. It was actually fighting for states' rights.
States' rights to do what?
Excuse me, sir?
States' rights to do what? What did you want to use those rights for? You usually don't mention that part. I want to hear it. I wonder what you want to do with them.
Well, the Confederacy didn't want to be oppressed by the North.
Really, what were they preventing you from doing? What did they not want you to do?
Listen, my friend, there was more to it than slavery for why we made the Confederacy.
That is really, really interesting, because the guy who made the Confederacy, the vice president, said that it was because they wanted to have slavery, and all the state constitutions said they wanted to have slavery, and they seceded the moment that the president got elected that was going to abolish slavery. Boy, the Confederacy sure looks slavery adjacent, at least. No, anyways, states' rights to what?
You're ignoring our other concern.
Yeah, but among the concerns was slavery, so I don't care, because you deserve it, because you're evil. And slavery is evil. That's you should know this. By the way, could you answer my question, you fucking traitor? States' rights to do what?
Well, it's our heritage.
It lasted 5 years. The Annoying Orange has existed longer than the Confederacy did. The fucking Annoying Orange, dude. You're gonna celebrate—
Dude, Minecraft has been around longer than the Confederacy was, by, like, a lot, too. Like, Minecraft has more claim to being, like, our culture than the Confederacy ever could.
In a nation so fucking weak, the Annoying Orange outlived it.
Well, states' rights.
Got Douglas.
Eat sticks.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much my opinion on the issue. That is my opinion on whether or not the Civil War was about slavery, and Nikki Haley is racist. Clearly. So fuck her. Debate me, Nikki Haley, in the marketplace of ideas, or you're cringe and you will never be president.